Coronavirus misery and economic hardship sparked street protests in Havana and across Cuba yesterday. To chants of liberty, enough, and unite, the demonstration grew to a few thousand and lasted more than 2 hours. There were altercations between protesters and police. Cuba's new president, Miguel Díaz-Canel, did make a masked appearance on the street. He later spoke on national TV, blaming the protest on anti-Cuban social media provocation. And joining us now is Carlos Ponce, Senior Fellow and Director of the Latin American Programs at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. Dr. Ponce, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We have a lot to discuss, including some really disturbing allegations of government mistreatment of a Catholic priest. But first, I'd like to talk about the demonstrations. Are you at all surprised? And why do you think this is happening now? What is fueling it?
Well, it has been 62 years of repression, persecution, lack of food, lack of medicine, 62 years. And people wonder if after Fidel Castro, they were expecting some change in Cuba. Nothing happened. After Raúl Castro stepped down, nothing happened. And recently, the Cuban regime also has been persecuting artists, persecuting also citizens, and not only political dissidents. They have been persecuting anyone who just raised the voice in Cuba. So people are getting tired of the regime, and finally, enough is enough. There's nothing coordinating this demonstration. This is people who's getting tired of not having food, not having liberty, and they are chanting Patria y Vida. So what they are chanting is they want the freedom for Cuba.
Yeah, and what do you think is going to happen next? And also, what do you think this signals to the U.S. and other countries?
Well, it's going to continue. My concern is going to be is that something like Belarus could happen. There's more violence. The criminal regime will persecute everyone. We bring more violent gangs to the street to repress people, persecute, killing. 60 people already disappeared. 5 people killed by the regime so far. Even a good friend of mine, a Catholic priest, Castor Álvarez, he's in jail after beating by the regime, after torture by the regime. Also, seminarian Rafael Cruz also in jail because of the regime. So they don't care if you are a Catholic priest, if you are a pastor, or you are an artist. You're gonna be forced to persecution and repression by the regime. The regime will continue that. The problem is the response from the international community. As we saw, the message from the White House was weak, calling for some kind of dialogue. This is a time for strong voices, global voices against this terrible regime, this tyranny that has been there for 62 years.
Yeah, and I was going to say to you, speaking of the U.S., do you think the Biden administration, do you think it should get involved in some way? And do you think they actually will get involved? What would you like to see happen?
Well, the problem is that you have different message internally in the administration. There are some people in the administration that wants to wait and see until the regime reacts, given an opportunity for some kind of dialogue. There are some people inside the administration who want something else from happening. So that confusion internally in the administration creates a problem for the Cuban people. They don't have the time and the luxury to wait until they figure out what a force internally in the administration will have the major strength internal. So far the response, there's a representative from the State Department that just blame COVID-19 and know the suffering from the Cuban people. I believe this is the time for the administration to open the voice and call for a global response to Cuba, not only U.S., individual sanctions, not global, individual sanctions for the members of the military and the people that is persecuting the Cubans, global approaches to Cuba, putting more pressure into regime, cutting down this regime. That is too much. 62 years is too much. Calling the Canadian government to stop supporting the regime, calling the Spanish government to stop supporting the regime, trying to stop any weapon that goes from Venezuela Venezuela or any governments from Venezuela from going to Cuba. That's the kind of reaction that we need from the administration.
Well, Dr. Ponce, we probably have maybe 20 seconds or so left, but quickly, final thoughts, and also, what would you like the American people and people of other countries to know?
Well, I believe that people need to know that also it's about religious freedom. It's a persecution against Christians. It's a persecution against Catholics. It's a persecution for anyone who can have a faith stronger that make this person fight against the regime. And I believe that this is a time also for the Pope to do something about the regime in Cuba and not continue supporting this regime.
Well, Dr. Ponce, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Carlos Ponce, Senior Fellow and Director of Latin American Programs at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.